Yeah, hello everyone. Is my voice audible, guys? So in last session we have explored about Redux, right? Anybody have any kind of doubts in that Redux part? Anyone? Any kind of doubts? So this is what we have done, right? Redux part. So let me do one thing here. Here we have a nav bar, right? So if I click on home, we are showing some home component. If you click on this categories, we are showing this kind of UI. And if I click on products, we are showing some UI here. If you click on this button, we are fetching the data from data that APIs and we are displaying here. So already we have done this all in the previous sessions. So now what I want to do here is I want to add one link called Redux here. So inside my nav bar, inside my nav component, I just wanted to add one link called Redux. And whenever I click on this link called Redux, I want my URL path should change to /Redux. So the moment I add this link tag, and if I go back to my browser, you will see that a link will be added called Redux. Now, should I call this link as a tag or should I use some other term? Can I use a term called tag here? Can I say this as a link tag? Tell me guys, can I call it as a link tag? Anyone? Yes, no? What will be your answer?
Yes, sir.
No, you should not call this as a link tag. You have because all these are components. Okay. So tag term we will be using for our HTML elements only. But when it comes to components, there we won't use this term called tag. Okay. So here we have to use the term like component only. So I have to say that I am rendering link component. We have to say we are rendering link component. So here I have rendered a link component called Redux. And whenever we click on this link component, whenever you click on this link Redux, now see your URL path should change to Redux. Let's try. If I click on Redux, I got here. Now, right now for this particular path, we don't have any kind of route. That is the reason it is showing page not found, page not found. So what we want to do for this particular path, we want to configure one route component. So for that, let me go back to my app.jsx file. Here in the app.jsx file, we have configured all the routes, right? So what we will do here, we will configure one more route. Route path equals to curly braces, element equals to curly braces. So here route is also a component. Here we are rendering route component. And now we have to match this path value with our URL path. So whenever in my browser, my path is /redux, whenever it will be /redux, which component you want to render, that component you have to, which component you want to show on the screen, that component you have to render here. So what I want to do here is, whenever I click on this Redux, I just wanted to show all those three components: name component, CT component, details component. All those three components I wanted to show here. Now, how to show all those three components? One way is you can create one separate component, okay? And in that component, you can render all those three component. And that component you can render here. So what we can do is, inside this Redux, I will just create one component called home Redux or something like Redux home dot JSX. You can create any component. So for that, I am creating one file first. Here I am simply adding a component, and inside this component, I will render all those three. So we have to import name component. Then we have to import CT component. Then we have to import details component. Now we have to render here all this. I want to take one div inside this. Here first let's import name component, then let's import CT component. And outside this div, let's import details component. And in last session, we have written some CSS for that, right? So let me just try to grab that code from the last session. So here we have this sub container. So let's try to add this sub container here. And now for this sub container, we have to create some CSS. So I think already in the app.css, we have that code. So here already we have. So what I will do now is, here I will import Redux home, and that Redux home component I will render here. So inside the Redux home, we are rendering all those three components, name, CT, and then we have details component. And then that Redux component we are rendering in the app.jsx. When Redux component, this Redux home component should render if our browser URL path is /redux. In our browser URL, if the path is /redux, in that case only Redux home component should render. So let's see whether it is working or not. Now, right now it is working. If I click on home, if I click on category, products, and if I click on Redux, I got this part. Now, if I just add here some name, if I click on submit, I got Kabir. If I select any CT here, and if I submit, that CT also we are able to get here. So basically what we have done is, we have just implemented Redux with this simple example. Now we have to implement Redux with some use case. So what are the use case? So first, let's try to understand this products component. Have you guys remembered the logic of this products component? So we have created one products component. In that, we are showing one title, one paragraph, and one button. The moment I click on this button, we are sending one request to a server, and that server is created by your fake store API. That fake store API will receive our request. They will connect with their database. They will fetch all the details from their database of all the products, and they will send all those product information to us in the response format. Now, once we receive that data we are displaying in our component in a card format. Every product we are displaying in a card format. So the moment I click on this, we are able to display the data. Now all this data, this entire data is coming from your database. And that database and backend application is maintained by fake store API people. So they created a database, they created a backend application, they have implemented logic, and they just deployed their application, and they are providing us lot of REST APIs. Now using those REST APIs, we are able to access the data and we are able to display that data in our component. So basically what we are doing here, we have created a products component. Okay. And this products component we have created in our React application. We have created in our React application. So that is our front end application. So this is your React application. Or you can call it as a front end application. Okay. Especially the people who are freshers, try to understand this flow. Because the people who are already working, for them it's very easy. But the people who are completely freshers, for them all these things are new. So you might not learn all this kind of flows in some other batches like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you are going to encounter this kind of flows first time in React. So just be careful with this flow. So this is your React application, or we can call it as a front-end application. Inside that, we have created one component, React component. Inside this React component, you have one button. You have one button. Now, to create entire web application, now there should be some backend application. Now, this backend application is created by fake store API people. And same fake store API people created some kind of database. They have created some kind of database. Some kind of database they have created. Inside their database, they are maintaining nearly 20 product information. 20 products information. They are maintaining 20 products information. Now we know that all these 20 products are divided into 4 categories. Some products belongs to electronics, some products belongs to jewelry, some products belongs to men clothing, some product belongs to women's clothing. So all these 20 products are divided into 4 categories. And this is their backend application. Now, what technology they have used to develop this backend application, that is none of our business. They might have used Node.js, they might have used Spring Boot, they might have used Django or Laravel or .NET, whatever they might have used, that is none of our business. What database they are maintaining, that is also none of our business. It can be Oracle, it can be SQL Server, it can be MongoDB, it can be anything. That is none of our business. As a front-end application, as a front-end developer, you don't require all those information also. So as a front-end developer, what do you require? You require the REST APIs. So in the backend application, REST APIs will be developed. And this REST APIs, if you want to access, then this backend developers are going to provide us some kind of URLs. And that is what this fake store API did. So this entire backend maintained by fake store API people. Now to access their services, to access functionality, they are providing us lot of REST APIs. In that, one of the REST API we are using. To access those REST APIs, they are going to provide us some URLs. They will provide us some URLs. Now, what we are doing, whenever user clicks on this particular button, we are sending one request. We are sending one request from our component to this backend application. Nothing but we are sending a request to their one of the REST API. Now, what these backend people are doing, they are accepting our request. They are connecting with the database. Whatever 20 products information they have, they are fetching all those 20 product information and they are sending back that data to us. The once we receive that data, all that data we are displaying in the form of cards. We are displaying in the form of cards. So here we are creating the cards and displaying all those 20 products. All those 20 products. That is what we are doing right now, which already we have implemented. Okay, so what you are doing, you are sending the request and then you are receiving the response. You are receiving the response. Now, what I want to do is, I want to do little bit modification here. What is that modification means? Right now, when we are sending the request, whenever we click on this button. So if I go back to some other component, again come back here, we are not able to see that data. The moment I click on this get products, we are getting that data here. We are going to receive that data here. See, here we got data. Now see how much time it took to get that data. Now, whenever I click on that button, it took some seconds for me. It took 3 or 2 seconds for me. Now, why it took 2 or 3 seconds for me? There can be multiple reasons. One of the reason can be my network might be slow. One of the reason can be my network can be slow. Another reason can be there can be some problem with the backend people only. Maybe their processing is taking little bit time. So to get this data from server, we are taking some time. It's taking some time. And the time might be due to multiple reasons. It can be issues at client side, it can be issues at server side, or it can be issues in the network as well. Now, if there is an internet issue, we cannot control that. Now, users will have their own internet, right? But if you are going to receive the data like this from backend little bit late, then user will never think about his issues. He is going to complain about your application only. He will think that your application is not working fine. It's taking a lot of time to load or it's taking a lot of time to get the pages. That is how a user's mentality will be. So one of the problem is if you do lot of network calls, then the biggest problem is it might affect the performance of your application because getting the data from the network might take some time. Sometimes it might be very fast, sometimes it might take time, due to which it might affect the performance of your application. So one of the way to overcome this problem is, what we can do, we can use Redux here. Now, how to use Redux here is, now whenever I click first time on this button, it will send a request and I will get the data. Whatever data I will get, I will store that data in my Redux store. Next time in the same session, whenever user visits same component called products, now instead of sending a request to a server, I will just get the data from the Redux and I will display in my component. First time, anyways, you have to send the request. There is no other option. But once you get the data, then that data we are going to store inside our Redux. And from second time, whenever user clicks on this product component in that particular session, then we are going to fetch the data from Redux instead of from the server. So right now, whenever I click on home component is displaying. If I click on products, again product component displayed. If I want to check that data, again I have to click on get products. Again that data should come from the server. Again, if I visit some other component, again if I come back here, again I have to click on this get products, and whenever you click on this, again data will come from the server. Now sometimes getting the data from server might be fast, sometimes it might take little bit time, which will affect the performance of your application. So to overcome this problem, we are going to use Redux now. How to use that Redux? Just I wanted to explain. So what we are going to do now, we have this front-end application, we have back-end application, and we are going to implement Redux. First time, whenever user clicks on that button, you will send a request to your backend. Now backend will send that data to you. Now that data you are displaying here. That data you are displaying here. In the same session, if user visits some other page, again if he comes back on product, again he have to click on that button. Again we are sending one more request to a server. Again server is sending the response. Again we are displaying the data here. This is what right now the flow is. So always sending the request and getting the data might be the problem. The first problem, it might affect your performance. Second, you are going to put little bit more burden on your server side application because it is going to process your request. So you are making your server to process your request multiple times. So instead of this, what we are going to do, first time we will send a request. Once we get the response, that data instead of displaying here, we will simply store that data inside our Redux. Once the data is inside the Redux, then that data we are going to display here. Now from second time, whenever user visits this component, now we will not send the request. Instead of that, we will get that data from Redux and we will display inside the component. Now this Redux will be created inside the browser only. Your application will be inside the browser. So getting the data from the browser will be very, very fast compared to getting the data from the server. If there is any modification in the server side or in your database, then to get that latest data, you have to send the request. And that whatever response you will get, again, you can store that data inside the Redux. And from here, you can fetch that data and you can display it. This is one of the use case of your Redux. Another use case, now if you see here, inside every product, there is a button called product details. Now, the moment I click on this product details, I should navigate to some other component called product details component. Now, inside that product details component, I should display only that particular product information here. Only that particular product information. So how to get that? If you are not implementing Redux, in this case also, whenever this component mounts, you have to send a request to your server and you have to ask this server, give me only one product information. Now, which product information you want, that product ID you have to send from your client, which already I have explained in that video. Now, this server is going to receive that request and it will send the response. Now, once you get only that particular product information, you will display that data here. Now, here again, we are doing one network request. And doing the network request is a risk. Sometimes you might get the data at faster rate. Sometimes it might take time. Now, instead of this, again, what we can do is, whenever user click on that product details, you will navigate to this product details component. And in this component, we want only one product information. Now, instead of sending the request to a server, we are going to connect with our Redux store. We will receive all that data from Redux store. We will filter the data based on our requirement, and we will display only one product information here. So again, here what you are doing, you are sharing the data from this component to this component with the help of Redux. Now your entire data is present here. Now from here, you will send the ID. That based on that ID, you will access the data of Redux. You will filter it and you will display here. You will display here. That is one more way how we are going to use the Redux. Now we wanted to implement this way. So before we implement this way, I wanted to ask one question. Right now, the scenario is if I click on this product, I'm getting a product component here. Basically, product component is mounted. The moment I click on this button, it is sending the request and I'm getting the data. So what I want to do, I want to remove this button now. I don't want to add that button. So I will go to that products wherever we have implemented. It's all products, I think. So here I want to remove this button. So the moment I remove this button, that button will not be visible. That button is not visible. Now what I want to do is whenever I visit this products component, the moment this component mounts, I want to send the request. So whenever my component mounts on the screen, I want to send a request to a server. I don't want to wait to perform any actions on this component. Once this component is mounted, I want to send a request. I want to get that data, and that data I want to display here. So for this, which concept I have to implement? So till now,
life cycle methods.
yeah, which concept in that?
Mount phase.
Any other answer, guys?
Use effect.
Yes, here I have to implement use effect. Use effect hook. So I have to import that use effect hook. I have to simply call that use effect hook here. Now use effect hook will take two arguments. The first argument is callback function. Second argument is dependency. So right now, I want this use effect should call this callback function only in mount phase. It should not call in the update phase. That is the reason I am passing here second argument as an empty array. Now inside this callback function, I will call this get products. Simply I will call get products. Now if I come back here, now see, if I click on home, the moment I click on products, I got the data. If I click on Redux, I got Redux. Again, if I click on products, I got the data. Categories, products. I got the data. So here, how many times we are sending the request to a server? Whenever you click on this products, you are sending a request to a server. Suppose if I go back to home and if I refresh, Let's assume that first time we are visiting this product. Whenever I click on this product, one request went to the server, we got the data. If I visit some other component, again, if I come back to the product, again, we are sending the request, again, we are receiving the response. If I click on home, again, if I come back to products, again, I am sending the request, again, I am getting the response. So right now in this particular sessions, 3 times we have sent the request to a server and we are getting this data because 3 times we have visited this products page. So now what I wanted to do is, first time whenever I visit, I need to send the request. I don't have any other option for that. So first time anyways, I have to send the request. Now they will send me some response. Now whatever response I got, that response I will store inside my Redux store. I will store inside my Redux store. And from my Redux store, I will fetch that data and display inside my component. Second time, whenever we visit this component, first we will check whether we have the data in the Redux store or not. If we have, then simply we will fetch that data from Redux and we will show here. Third time, if you visit the same page or same component, again we will check in the Redux store, do we have the data or not? If we have, then that data we will display here. If we don't have, then only we will send the request. So here you are going to reduce number of requests which you are going to send. And you will be fetching the data from Redux store. So fetching the data from Redux store will be very, very fast. Now here if you see, it will take some time. The moment I click on Redux, click on products, taking some time and getting data. Category, click on products, taking some time and getting the data. If I click on home, again click on product, taking some time and getting that data. So here we have written the logic to send the request, get that data, and then that data we are updating inside our state. Now, already we have Redux, all the setup is ready with us. We have already component, we have already APIs. So here simply I will write something like backend API. And here we have Redux as well. So already we have written the code to send the request to a server. And we are getting that data. Once we get that data, right now what we are doing, whatever data we got, that data we are updating inside our state. Here we have created one state. And inside that state, we are storing that data. And from this state, we are displaying that data inside our component. That is what we are doing right now. So what I want to do, once I receive this data from server, I don't want to update that data inside my state. So this step I don't want to implement. So if I don't update my state, then that data will not display in my UI. So if you see here, we are sending the request, we are getting the data, and that data we are updating inside this state, set all products. So I will comment this part. I will comment this part. Now if you see, there will be no data updated on this screen. There is no data here. There is no data here. So what we want to do is, here, this is our first step. We got second step. Now, once we receive that data from server, now this data we want to store inside our Redux. Store inside our Redux. So what I have to do for this? Because you know how to store the data in Redux. So can you guys tell me what I have to do here now? What logics or how can I do this part? So before that, let me know whether you have understood flow or not. Whether you have understood what we wanted to do or not. And what is the problem with current situation?
The current problem is every time we need to hit the backend API.
Yeah, so every time we are hitting the backend API, so we want to restrict that part. Okay, so we have understood the problem. Now, what is the solution? What is the solution for this?
First time we need to, when we get the data from backend API, we need to store in the Redux.
Yeah, so the first proper solution is we have to store the data in Redux and fetch from it. Okay, we have to fetch that data from Redux. Third is how to implement. How to implement. So to implement, already you know the flow, right? Already we have done one simple example for this. Okay, so right now in our Redux store, what is the initial data we are storing? What is the initial data we are storing in our
Empty.
Redux?
Empty.
No, not empty. We are storing one object, initial data. In that, we have two properties name, whose value is empty string, and CT, whose value is empty string. This is what the initial data in our Redux right now. Because already we have implemented this part, right? This is the initial data you have in the Redux right now. Now, what changes we have to do? Now, in name, anyways, name component will store its data. In CT component will store the data. Now, you wanted to store products data also here. Then how you will store the products data? Inside the name component is storing the data. This name component is storing the data. Inside the CT component is storing the data. Now you want products data also you wanted to store in the Redux. That is what our solution is. So once we get data, third step is we have to store that data inside our Redux. So now what changes I have to do first of all here? Because here I don't have any place to store the data. Either I have to replace my data in name or CT, which I don't want to do. Then what is the solution? Anyone?
Can't we add one more name, city, and products?
That is what we have to do. We have to add one products property. Or whatever key you want to give, you can give, but we have to add one property here now. Called products. So that whatever data we will going to store, that we will store here. And this product's initial value, we will try to keep empty array. Why empty array? Because from server, whatever data we are going to get, that data will be inside the array only. All that 20 products you are going to get inside this array only. And array will be very suitable for us to write some conditions. So what we will do, initially inside our Redux store, we will add one property. Here we will add one property called products, and whose value we will assign as an empty array. So that whenever I want to check whether in my Redux the data is there or not, in that case, this array will be helpful for us. Simply we can access this property and we can check array.length. If it is equals to 0, or it is greater than 0. If array.length is greater than 0, it means we can assume that in this array we have a data. If array.length is equals to 0, then we can assume that inside our Redux products data is empty. So here I am just storing empty array. So now initially our Redux looks like this now. Now what I have to do? So now we have here products component, which is going to receive the data from server. And this data we have to store in our Redux. You have to store the data in the Redux store. Now what I have to do for this? How can I store the data from my products component to Redux store? Here see we have receiving the data, right? In the products component we are receiving the data. Here we are receiving the data. So this data inside this response.data, whatever this data is there, this data I need to store in my Redux. So data is with the products component. So from here, how can I store the data? Anyway, how can I store the data? Same flow we have to implement, right? We have to create one action object. We have to create one action object. And before that action object, we have to create one action creator function. Inside that action creator function, we have to create action object. So whatever data you got, this data you have to give to the action creator. What this action creator will do, it will add that data inside the action object. And this action creator will return this action object to the component. It will return that action object to the component. So what you have to do? First, you have to give this data to the action creator. Step 1. Action creator will add that data inside the action object. That is step 2. Then action creator will return that data, will return this action object. Will return this action object to the component back. That is step 3. It will return the action object. Step 3. Now, once component receives that action object, it will call the dispatch. It will call the dispatch. It will call the dispatch. And to this dispatch, it will give that action object. It will simply pass that action object. Now what this dispatch will do, dispatch will call reducer. Dispatch will call your reducer. It will call simply your reducer. And it will give this action object to the reducer. What reducer will do? It will just access Redux store data and it will modify that Redux store data and it will update that data inside the Redux store. Redux store. That is what the complete flow of your Redux. So basically, you have to implement this flow. You have to implement this flow. So this will be your 4th step. This will be your 5th step. This will be your 6th step. This is how you will be storing the data inside your Redux. Okay. So can you guys implement it by your own? Can you guys try to implement by your own first before I show this solution and check whether you guys are able to do or not? So it will give you the idea how much you have understood Redux. And if you get any doubts in that flow, let me know in tomorrow's session. So before I implement this solution, I want you guys to try. I have explained you the flow. Now, in this way only you have to implement it. And make sure that you are storing the data in the Redux store. Yeah, right now, if you have any doubts, you guys can ask. Anyone, any doubts? Yeah, if you don't have any doubts, you guys can drop and implement this part. Let me check how many of you can do this part.